Hello everyone. Hopefully you can hear me and see the screen I'm currently sharing. I see a lot of you again from a lot of different countries around the world. Thank you for joining us again. Welcome to the third week of our BEXEL Manager Online Education. My name is Mileta. I'm a BIM manager at BEXEL Consulting, and as previous weeks, I'm going to teach you how to work in BEXEL Manager platform. For any questions, as previous weeks, use Q&A and I'll try to respond to them as much as I can. If you're for the first time with us on these sessions, this is another online session introducing you BEXEL Manager. We're almost at the halfway of our journey now, demonstrating you BIM workflows and BEXEL Manager in live demo. And all these sessions will be recorded, so you don't have to worry if you miss something. You're gonna get a link to watch it again. And last week we talked about selection sets and element grouping. We mentioned simple animation options and ways how to coordinate BIM project using clash detection. Also, I briefly explained how to calculate and extract quantities from the BIM project using quantity takeoff module. I already see a question, is there a way to get the previous webinars? I think you're gonna get the link with all the previous recorded webinars as well as the latest. And after these, all these sessions are finished next or maybe in 2 weeks, all the sessions will be published on YouTube. Today, we're going to explain some more advanced and more interesting features of BEXEL Manager used for cost estimation and cost management. Before that, let me just inform you that we're releasing a new updated version of BEXEL Manager probably tomorrow or a day after, definitely before the end of the week. And this new release will be available in German, Spanish, French, and Russian language. And within a few weeks, I think in mid-May, Italian version will be also available. And this new version will have some minor updates and improvements, but also is going to have some new, very important and useful features, which partially I'm going to explain you today and tomorrow. And some of these are related to the cost estimation and to the scheduling options. So as a continuation to the previous sessions where we learned how to extract quantities from the BIM model and how to calculate the quantities from the BIM project, I'm going to explain how to create cost estimation of your project and how to create your cost classification, cost items, and how to assign these cost items to your BIM model in order to calculate the quantities and cost as well. So we're going to start today as a brief explanation of this cost estimation module from the sample project that all of you who installed BEXEL Manager already have. In order to open this demo sample model, on the opening screen, you can just go to the Open Sample Project. I already have it opened, and the tools and the features regarding the cost estimation and cost management in BEXEL Manager are Cost Editor and Assigned Items modules in the lower part of the screen. So when you hit Cost Editor, you're going to get the window presenting you cost classification, and these are some already populated, already loaded cost classification systems in this demo sample model. We have master format and uniformat classification loaded, and this is the place where you can select or choose which classification system you want to use on your BIM project. You can, of course, create different new classification systems on different languages, using different currencies. And also, before we start, in order to use the currency related for your project or for your country, you can go to the project information and then change the currency. And I have to mention once again that the currency is actually just changing the symbol of your price of your currency actually, but it's not calculating or recalculating the price according to that, because the BEXEL manager as a system is not linked to any online exchange database or something like that. So basically what you're changing here is just the changing symbol. So if you created your cost classification with specific cost items and you provided the price, if you change your currency, let me just change it to the United Kingdom, it's just going to change the symbol. The price is not recalculated. So you have to know that and keep that in mind when you work in your projects. So in order to explain how the system works, this is the place where you can specify and create your cost classification and load and export your cost databases. Of course, the cost editor contains classification database, cost item database, and database of resources. So this one here is actually classification database, as you see that in the tab, classification editor, listing all the classification items. If you want to go and explore your cost item and database or the database of your cost item definitions from all available cost classification. In this case, we have master format and uniformat classifications loaded in the system. You can explore all these cost classification items and definitions from all loaded databases, in this case, master format and uniformat. And all these items can be accessed right here. And here you can edit each of these. Additionally, I'm going to explain all these properties later on. And also we have a resource database when you can list and specify resources which are available on your project. And based on the resources, you can create and specify the cost items and the price for each cost item. So let me just switch this window to the previously opened project, which we used in a previous session. This is the one. And this is something that you're gonna get when you open your project. If you're with us from the first session, you know that we started and created this project from the scratch using different sources coming from the Revit, in this case from BX3 files, and we merged, in this case, 4 sources for the architectural and structural and MEP parts of this project for different buildings. And you note that in this BIM project, we don't have any available cost classification, nor we have the cost item definition or the resources. So this is something that you're usually gonna get when you start the project from scratch. And if you want to create your cost classification, this is the way how you can do it. And then I'm gonna explain how you can share and exchange different classification systems from different projects and how you can load them and use them on different projects. So if you want to create new classification system, this is the way. We're going to create new classification system, providing the name for it. And then usually the way how we creating the cost items and cost classifications, we can specify different types and different codes for this classification. And usually in the projects, you have different subfolders or classification items. In this case, by right-clicking on the folder, you can choose from this window what you want to create. In order to create cost classification, we're gonna create new classification item. In case you want to create new cost item, then you can choose cost item. In this case, just for a presentation purposes, we're gonna create new classification item. And this is the place where you're specifying the code, the name and description for each of your cost classification items. In this case, this is the architectural. So this is the, let's say, work breakdown structure where we're specifying different types of works of different cost classification or the items. The first one could be folder for the architectural works and items. The next one could be for, let's say, structural. And the last one can be for MEP. Of course, you can use the codes from existing classification systems of your project, and you can import these. I'm going to show you later on how. And these are few, let's say, subfolders or cost classification items. Let me just check the questions you already have. Is it possible to switch from the English to French language within the same license? Yes, of course. The new version will be available, and when you start installing of your updated version of the BEXEL manager, then you're gonna get the drop-down menu when you can choose which version we're gonna install, and you're not gonna change the license. You're just gonna update already existing version of the software with existing license. So we're gonna continue with explaining how to create your cost classification and cost items. So this is the simple, really simplistic way to create your cost classification. And these are, let's say, three main types of works or different ways of segregating our cost items. And of course, whenever you create your cost classification or the cost items itself, all these are going to be listed in this same window. And you see these different columns, and I'm going to explain what these columns are actually representing. So the first one is the place where you're specifying the code and the name of your cost and classification items. The next one is actually the name. The first one is the code. The next one is the name. And then for each of these, if you go to the edit, you can see description. The next one is the number of existing cost items within each of these folders. So if we create additional folders and the cost items, you're going to see all these created cost items will be listed and counted in this column right here. Unit cost and daily outputs are the columns where you're specifying the cost item and the information for each cost item. So let me just briefly bring back this sample B model. So for each cost item which is created, I'm going to expand it to the last level. You see the unit cost, which representing the unit price for this cost item. The daily output is the daily output specified needed or actually this is the information about the quantities which are daily achieved for this specific cost item. This is the quantity type, which also you're going to specify, showing the type of the quantity of your cost item. The quantity unit presents the unit of your cost item. And these two columns are really important because quantity formula is the place where you're specifying how this cost item will be calculated using the elements from the B model. So basically, you're specifying which property or which formula coming from the B model will be calculated and how it's going to be calculated in order to calculate the quantity. And this quantity, which is going to be calculated automatically, will be multiplied or summarized with unit cost. And then you're going to get the total price of your works and cost items. And element query is the place where you're specifying or where you're telling the BEXEL manager to the system how to automatically group and assign specific B model elements coming from the project to this specific cost item. So this is the place where you can automatically join your cost items to respective B model elements. And this is how it works. I'm gonna go back to this newly created project. We don't have any cost item, but we already have some folders and subfolders for these. And if we want to automatically, even now at the beginning, to tell within this folder, we can just use specific B model elements coming from the architectural source or the structural or MEP source. We can even here specify element query. So even for the folders or the cost classification items, we can specify the query. And this can be done right here by editing the existing cost items. And here within the window query, we can specify which query we want to use to additionally tell the system which elements will be calculated or which are going to be included into specific group of this classification. So in this case, when we're choosing the architectural, I can specify the query to be, in this specific project, source coming from the architectural project or architectural B model. So I know that this query is actually BIM project name, or actually my document name, which is document title, starting with AR in this case, because these are all architectural B models. And if we do this, within the list of the sources, available sources in the project, we know that we have architectural B model, mechanical, and 2 structural B models for 2 different buildings. So now what we did now is by providing the query or by providing the rules, how the system will automatically collect the elements and group them in specific folder, we can right-click on the folder and choose the option select applicable element. And in this case, the system will show you which elements are actually applicable to, according to this query, to be assigned to specific cost item. So if we do this, select applicable elements, the system automatically collects or actually selects 144 elements. And you note that all these are actually elements coming from the architectural source. Let me just show you that. They are coming from the same file starting with AR. So we can do the similar thing for all other folders. Provide specific queries. And you can use and select any available property from your project. So in this case, for this specific project is document title. You can use any property in your project depending on BIM execution plan or the properties that you used when you created your project. So in this case, we're creating the query or the rules for the structural elements. And if we apply the option select applicable elements, then the system automatically selects only element coming from these 2 structural sources based on the name of that document. And this is the way how you can create the rules for the folders. But if you want to create cost items, not just folders, then you can easily right-click on the folder in which you want to create cost item and create new cost item. In this case, because we do not have already loaded classification items or cost databases, we can create new from new definition. In case you already have something that you can, then you can choose from existing definition. I'm gonna briefly switch to the previous project again, this sample that all of you already have. So in this case, if we want to create new cost item, we can choose from existing definition, and then we can choose from the available list of the available. But for this new project, we do not have anything already created, so we can create new cost item from new definition. And right here, we can specify the code for the cost item. So in this case, I'm going to provide the code, which is the subcode of this one here. And I'm going to create, for example, cost items for structural concrete columns. Just for presentation and explaining purposes. We can specify description, but these are the information which are really important to be populated. So the first one is the general tab, which specifying the general information about the cost item. So you can specify the daily output, quantity type. In this case, it's going to be volume, because structural concrete columns are usually calculated by the volume of concrete or the number of prefabricated elements. In this case, we're going to use custom place elements, for example. And we're going to choose the quantity type volume, quantity unit cubic meters as well. And the most simplistic way how you can create your cost item is if you have some, let's say, information from the market, from your local market, you can just specify the price. And this is, for example, the price, unit price for 1 cubic meter of concrete columns. So it's going to be, let's say, in this case, $200 per cubic meter, and that's it. The system will automatically segregate this price into material, labor, and equipment supplement. And this is something that you can do if you don't have the additional information about resources needed for this specific cost item. And of course, if we want to tell the system how to automatically link this cost item to our structural concrete beams, then we can specify the query. So this is the place where we can specify the query, which will automatically find and calculate and actually collect and link the structural concrete. So in this case, I'm gonna choose the property for the elements. And in this case, these are gonna be not just the properties. In this case, I'm gonna use the category. So we want to select all the structural columns from the B model, which are coming from the source of the structural project. And additionally, we want to only collect the structural columns which have material with the name concrete within itself or something like that. So I'm going to use the additional query, which is material name, contains, in this case, concrete. And this is the query which is created. And of course, one of the most important things which you're specifying and defining when creating cost items is the formula. So this is where you say the system how is going to calculate the properties and the unit price. So here within the mappings, we can specify the formula which is going to be used. In this case is volume from this available B model. So I'm just gonna double click on the volume, and the system will use property volume coming from this project in order to calculate the volume and the unit price in order to calculate the total price of the structural concrete. And this is really, really simple way if you do not have or you do not create your cost based on resources. This is something if you have, for example, the material or the price coming from the local market. And now we created the cost item for the structural concrete columns. And now let me show you, because we created the query or we set the rules, if we right click on this cost item and choose select applicable elements, the system now only selects concrete columns. I can isolate these elements, and this is it. And then the system can automatically calculate the price based on this. So you do not have to manually link the B model elements to specific cost items. You can tell the system how to do it automatically. So let me just explain how you can create fully and how you can define fully cost item if you have your resources, for example. So in order to provide full information when you're creating cost items, then the first thing is to create your resources. So within the list of resources, you can specify resources which you want to use in this specific BIM project. And in this case, I'm gonna, let's say, specify concrete ready mix, for example. And within the list of resources, you can specify which type of resources this is going to be. So of course you can choose from material, labor, and equipment. If you select in this case material, then for the quantity type and quantity unit, you can choose something which is related to that specific material. In this case, I'm going to select the volume and the cubic meters. And for unit cost, in this case, we can specify the price for the cubic meter of concrete ready mix of specific type of concrete. So in this case, it's going to be, let's say, $140. We can also specify and create new materials and resources. In this case, we already created some material. Now we can specify some labor as a resource. So it's going to be some common laborer. We can specify as a type to be a labor. The quantity type and quantity unit for the labor can be usually time. And how it's going to be calculated by hour. So hourly, this specific common labor will gonna cost, for example, $38. You can specify whatever you like, and additionally, at any specific point, you can change these, and automatically by changing the price of resources, the created cost item will be automatically updated. So I'm going to show you as well. And of course, you can specify the equipment for different resources. So in this case, we're going to create some truck. So right here, we're going to specify equipment. Of course, we can specify the quantity type. In this case, usually when you paying the equipment, it's daily, and in this case, the price of truck on a daily basis will be, let's say, $250. So once we specified the resources, then we can go back to the classification editor, and then we can specify cost items to be calculated based on actual and real resources. And all these information coming from the cost items and the resources, if you have them, can be applied and can be additionally monitored and checked when you create your schedules and link your cost estimation with the schedules and actual plan. So this is really important. And if you have all this information, the more information you're gonna get and you can extract from the later usage of your BIM project. So now I'm gonna create additional cost item, in this case, let's say structural concrete foundation, something like that. So I'm gonna create new cost item. In this case, it's gonna be structural foundations. Of course, you can specify the description and so on, but I'm going to show you how you can use resources to create your price. So now when we go to the tab resources, you can choose from available list of resources which is going to be used to create this or to define the price of your cost item. So in this case, we're going to use all these 3 different sources or resources. So the labor, concrete, and so actually labor, material, and equipment will be included to calculate the price. So now you're going to see how the price is automatically created. If we go to the general and specify that structural foundation will also be calculated based on the volume, the system automatically calculates that the price is the summary of this, of all the resources. But this is because the daily output is only 1 cubic meter per day. So if we specify that this, or actually the number of the available resources which we currently have, and in this case, if we want to tell the system that we have entire 1 laborer for entire day, we can specify the quantity 8 hours or 8 working hours, which is default. It's 1 day. So the general price will be automatically changed according to this. But then we can say that this number of resources daily can execute, for example, 6 cubic meters. So the price is also automatically recalculated, and everything is, let's say, linked and related. So whatever you choose and select within the resources, the price will be calculated. And also based on the daily output, you can extract all these information and use all this information in the later stages when you link your cost estimation with the schedule. And of course, we can specify the mappings or tell the system how to automatically link our actually elements to the cost items and which property we want to choose. In this case, I'm going to also use the volume. But of course, if this, for example, is not the structural foundation concrete item, for example, if this is a structural foundation rebars or reinforcement item, then you can specify the let's say some formula which you can use to calculate the quantity even for the elements you don't have, for example, in your B model. So let me just explain you briefly this. So currently I'm gonna leave the volume as default property. And of course we can specify the query which we're gonna use to automatically link cost item and B model. In this case, I'm gonna use the property value uniformat because we already have uniformat property in this project, and in this case for the structural foundation, the uniformat code is A1010-130. So if we do this, hit OK, now you see the price, unit price is automatically calculated. We have the element query, and we can select if this element query works as we wanted. We can choose select applicable elements from the model, and as you may see, the system automatically selects only structural foundations. But let me just explain what I wanted to show you previously. For example, if you want to calculate, this is something that we commonly see as a questions. What we can do if we want to calculate the price of, let's say, reinforcement, or the price of, let's say, some other works which are not in the model. And how to do that? Well, there's two ways how you can do that. The one way is you can use available B model and the elements in the B model to create specific formulas and use these formulas to calculate the value and the item which you do not have in your B model already. So in this case, if we want to calculate the reinforcement of the structural foundations, we can check available properties. And in this case, in this B model, we have already available property, which is reinforcement. So let me just find this reinforcement, which says 52 kilograms per cubic meter, I think. So if this is the property that you have, you can use the properties available to create your cost items and specify the formula which will be used to calculate the price. So I'm going to use the edit, and instead of volume, we can use the additional property, in this case, reinforcement, to tell the system to calculate these two properties and to calculate the quantity of reinforcement automatically. Or you can use and create any other formula that you want to use for that specific cost item if you do not have all these B model elements in your B model. So the system now can be used to calculate the price. So if we do not have, for example, the queries which we currently created, then the usual workflow is you can select all these elements manually. In this case, I can select from the list of my elements all the structural columns and link the columns to my cost item by assign cost items. So this is the option to manually assign your cost items, and then the system will ask you if you want to create new cost version, because the cost editor is actually the place where you're specifying the classification. The cost item definition is the list of all your items. Resources is database of resources. But if you want to check and calculate the price and create your cost versions, the cost versions will be created within the module assigned items. So basically, cost editor is actually database of different classification of your items and resources, and assigned items is actually the database of your cost versions. So in this case, when we create and link our B model elements to the cost items, the system will create new cost version, and in this case, we're going to create the name or specify the name of this cost version. In this case, it's new, and the system will recognize the property or the formula to calculate the price. If we hit OK, then we can go to the assigned items, and then the system will show us the price and the quantity of the structural concrete columns. So in the first column, you see the quantity, and we can check if this quantity is accurate. We can go to the favorite properties, and this is the summarized volume. So it's accurate, unit price, and the total cost. But what is the actually the main workflow, and what are the full benefits of using the BEXEL manager? So if we go to the cost editor once again, and if we specify these kind of cost estimation, this kind of cost items using element queries, then by right-clicking on our cost classification and using option auto-assign cost items, the system will automatically use quantity formula and element queries to automatically select and assign specific bimodal elements to specific item, and using the formula is going to calculate the value of the quantities and the price. So if we hit auto-assign cost items to new cost version, the system will automatically create new cost version with auto-assign cost items. So in this case, I'm going to go to the auto-assign, and we see automatically calculated price for the structural columns and the structural foundation reinforcement. And this is the quantity of the reinforcement, and this is the unit cost, which will multiply with this, gives you the total cost. So let me just go back in our cost editor and change the price, because we created actually the cost item for the concrete, and then we specified to calculate the reinforcement. So I'm gonna change or remove resources to just use, let's say, the laborer, and then additionally, I can specify material supplement for this, and then the total price or unit price will be $60 per, in this case, let's say mass kilograms. So within the assigned items, the system will recalculate, and everything is updated automatically. And of course, if we change, for example, the price, if I go to the cost editor again, change the price for the common laborer, and change it, for example, to $58 per hour. If we go to the cost classification, you see the price is automatically changed. And of course, within the assigned items, the price is also automatically changed. So everything is related and linked. And now, if you see the actually the basics, how you can create your cost classification and how you can create your cost items, then you can use export and import options to do it, not using the BEXEL manager, for example, but using the Excel spreadsheets. So in this case, I can export this default cost editor, cost classification, into my Excel spreadsheet. This one is new. And I'm gonna open it just to show you how this Excel spreadsheet looks like and how you can populate it. So this is the Excel spreadsheet automatically generated. You can do it for any classification system that you have. You can export it for any project that you have. And automatically you're gonna get the first, let's say, sheet with the explanation and the help, how the different expressions are used to create or to populate all these fields. And of course, all the resources used are going to be exported in the list of resources. So you can additionally specify your resources right here. And of course, you can create your new items. So in this case, I'm going to copy, let's say, the structural concrete item into my, let's say, MEP works. We're going to change the outline level. We can change the code. We're going to specify different name. These are, let's say, ducts or something like that. The quantity type can be length. We're going to change it to the meters from the list. And of course, the quantity formula in this case is going to be just the length, property length. For the element queries, if we know the queries, I can just find some queries for the ducts. Let me just find some ducts in my project. I'm just explaining workflow, common workflow used to create your cost classification items and the database. So let me just find the ducts, mechanical ducts. So we can check specific property which all these ducts have. So uniformat can vary defined from the system. So I'm going to use some of these. Let's copy this one. Go back to the Excel spreadsheet and change it to this one. And of course, if we have the price, if we're specifying the price based on the resources, we can change this to the new laborer, and that's it. So if we satisfy with this, we can save it, and then we can import this cost classification into our project. So one way is to update already existing cost classification, or we can create a new one and import it from the scratch. In this case, I'm going to import it as an update. We're going to choose from the list of available cost databases, in this case, the one that we just created, new cost. And that's it. If you have some errors, the system will actually tell you which are the errors if you specified something which is not correct. But in this case, we specified everything correct within this specific cost item, and you see automatically new cost item is created. We can check if this element query works, select applicable elements, and you see automatically system selects ducts which have the uniformat code specified here. And of course, we can do the option auto assign cost items to new cost version or to the active cost version. So if we do that to the active cost version, this assigned items versions will be just updated. So we can do this, auto assign cost items to active cost version. Okay, and the system will ask how to update previously created cost estimation. We're going to select replace, and now the system automatically creates the price for these new items. And this is really nice because if you have your cost classification already created for the first time, you can use and load different classification systems from different languages on any project that you use. So in this case, I'm going to create new cost classification. And I'm going to show you how you can import different cost classification which will be created or which you can create. And of course, some of these cost databases, we as a BEXEL manager, we're gonna publish on our user area, and you can use them automatically for the project. So for example, we have some different cost classification on different languages, and now I'm gonna show you some of different cost classification on different languages. This one is Swedish classification, and then you can create your cost items. Then we can create new one. So for example, this one. And this is the German cost classification with the German uh, names and codes. And of course, whatever you created, it can be loaded. I also have some local cost version with the different cost items as well. So let me just show you this. So this is the one with the cost items, and then you can specify the price. And of course, when you loaded multiple cost classifications and multiple cost databases, then you can explore all available cost items, change them, edit right here, and also all available resources from all these different cost classification database. And of course, what is really important is that from all the previously defined projects, so I'm gonna open this sample project, which already have uniformat and master format classification systems, we can export these and reuse them in our project. We can export them in two ways, using the export button or using the button to exchange the information from the project. So there are two ways how you can exchange these information. So in this case, I already show you how you can load the Excel spreadsheets. Now I'm gonna explain how you can exchange cost classification from uniformat and master format. And this is exported as an BXF file. So I'm gonna save it in the same folder. Cost exchange. And once it's exported, now we can reuse this uniformat and master format classification with all these queries and the formulas in our project. So now I'm gonna use the option exchange, import from the cost databases, cost exchange. And then we can choose cost classification, okay. And now the system automatically loaded all these new uniformat and master format cost classification databases. And this one, uniformat, as you may note, and you see if you open the sample B model, is fully defined by the queries and the formulas. So if we do this simple option, auto-assign cost items to new cost version, the entire project will be automatically recalculated and the price will be calculated based on this. So if we hit OK, the system will take some time, and then the new cost version is created. If we go to the assigned items, we can list all the cost versions. This is the previous one from the new classification with just few cost items, and this is the last one based on the uniformat. And we see the full price of the project. And of course, we can change the name of these assigned cost versions. And you can easily compare different cost versions, of course. So we can, for each of these cost classifications, we can export. Let me just bring it back again. We can export and change the price, for example. So you can easily compare the, let's say, contracted values and internal values for your cost items. So if you want to do that, you can easily use the option or the column which is called fixed cost, fixed unit cost. Unit cost is the column which is automatically calculating the prices based on the resources. But if you want to specify new cost items from the, let's say, from the market, local market, you can use this and change the prices. So let's just do it for a few cost items, just to present you this. For these few cost items, I'm gonna populate the fixed unit cost column, save it, and then I can easily create new classification, which will be called Uniformat changed price, and we can load it and we can compare the prices. This is the one. Okay, so if we expand it, for the first few, you're gonna see the price is changed. And if we create new cost version using the option auto assign cost items to new cost version, we can easily compare the price. So if we go to the assigned items, the total cost now and the previous one, it's really, really simple. And then we can use additional options which are filtering. So check the price for selected elements. So if we want to check the elements which have, let's say, changed price, we can select these few cost items. We can select applicable elements or select assigned elements. So these are applicable elements. And then we can go to the assigned items, use the option filter by element selection. The system will show us the price for only these selected elements. And then we can do that for the different cost versions. And of course, each cost version can be exported into Excel spreadsheets, and you can compare these in the Excel. So we can export these cost version into the Excel spreadsheet. And this is how the exported Excel spreadsheet looks like with the cost estimation. So this is basically the cost estimation, and this is only for selected or filtered elements. If you want to export entire cost classification, we can disable filter and then export. And this can be used for specific, let's say, tendering packages. So this is the full. You see the codes, description and the names, quantities, and of course, resource prices, and of course, the summarized the total cost, all the information available. And let me just explain how you can usually use this to create your different cost estimations for the tendering packages. So if you have your selection sets, for example, based on Uniformat or any other classification systems, then you can use these classifications or the groups and use the option filter by, so automatically see the price for this tendering package. So let's go to the Uniformat. And these are all for the, let's say, substructure works. These are all for the all Uniformat codes or the works which starts with a B. These are, I think, superstructure. And so on. And of course, and this is just one of, let's say, one of the benefits and one of the features of BEXEL Manager. Now I'm gonna open the beta version of the software and show you how you can automatically create your cost classification based on quantity takeoffs or custom breakdowns. So let me just do that as well. So I'm gonna open the project. So let me just open a totally different project. In the meanwhile, I'm gonna open the same sample project in the beta version on my second screen. So this is the project that I already showed you. This is the Uniformat. This is the project which is created for the infrastructure using the IFC files. You see that this project is open from the IFC files, and we have some, let's say, quantity takeoff, which is created based on different buildings, and then we used family name and the quantity as a count on the number of the elements, because this is really specific project and it has specific additional property for each of quantity. So if you have this kind of segregation in your project, this is something that you're gonna get in the updated version of the BEXEL Manager quite soon. If you want to create your cost classification, we can create it based on available quantity takeoffs or available custom breakdowns. In this case, we don't have a custom breakdown, but we do have the quantity takeoff, and we can use it to create segregation using the option creation wizard. This is something new. And in this case, we can use from quantity takeoff to create cost classification and the cost items using available property. This all feature is going to be updated and improved before release. So this is just a brief, let's say, hint how it's going to look like. So if we hit OK, the system automatically creates cost classification with the queries. And then you can specify the price and the quantities for each of these. And this is really improved way how you can easily and fast create your entire cost classifications and your cost items. So my second project is already open in my, yes. So it's opened. So we can do this here as well. We can create new cost classification. New from quantity takeoffs. And then in this sample or this project, we have a lot of different quantity takeoffs, and we can use it to even create specific, let's say, folders or subfolders of our cost classification. So here we can create creation wizard from quantity takeoff using the, let's say, architectural walls. And automatically the system checks the formula based on the available properties within the quantity takeoff. So we have the architectural walls. Automatically we have the query, we have even quantity unit. If I go to my quantity takeoff and, for example, see the structural quantity takeoff, how it's created, and it calculates the volume, then we can go to the cost editor and do additional classification right here from creation wizard, from quantity takeoff and use, let's say, quantity takeoff structural, automatically calculates volume. And that's it. So now we have the additional segregation based on these items. And then if we specify the price, we can easily do the option auto assign, and the system will automatically assign and calculate the full price of your project. And also something that our users usually ask, okay, we do have our, let's say, cost estimation, and let me just do it. We have our cost estimation based on the Uniformat code, but what happens if we have some works which we do not have in our B model? For example, quantity, or actually surveying, or B management, or all these kinds of works which supposed to be calculated in the price, but we do not have the B model which is going to be related to that cost item. Well, we also have the new option which is used and which can be used within the assigned items. So practically when you create your cost estimation, then you can use the option new cost assignment, and then you can specify the price for additional works. Of course, you have to create specific cost items before within your cost classification, and then you can use these to calculate the price, for example, for the field supervision or the survey and layout. And we can do this. So within the Uniformat, now we have the price for this as well, even though we do not have any B model element linked to it. We have the price of the survey. And this is the way how you can add your additional prices for the works which are not included in your B model. And also, once you created your project, we can save it. And let me just show you how the system works when you update the project. So if we update this project with the new sources, for example, for the mechanical works, from the new source of mechanical elements, I'm going to close this and open, or actually update the project. So this is the one that we closed currently. We're going to update it with a new source. And I'm going to add this new source for the second building of this project. So let me just find this. So this is the second building for the mechanical elements, and we hit OK. So while we waiting the system to update, let me just check your questions. If you have your questions, we can specify the source. This is a new source for the mechanical works, and it's going to be populated automatically. So let me just check your questions. Can one import resources from Excel? Yes, I already showed you that. If you, let me just briefly open this cost version. So all the resources are listed, and you can add resources. I already added few resources in my sample project. Can we import the cost classification from ERP, or do you have standard connector? Currently, the way, or actually the workaround, is to create the Excel spreadsheet in the format which I already presented, and then you can import them back. Can you show how to use the report button? Yes, if you have your assigned items, your cost version, or let me just before that show you how you can automatically update the price. So here we see the price of the project without this additional added elements. And then once we updated the project, the system automatically creates selection sets for the updated elements. Today we updated mechanical. These are all new elements, and of course this is the way where I can show you how the elements which are not actually related or linked to your cost estimation are presented in this specific view, which is used to assigned and unassigned cost. So all the elements which are already calculated within the current cost version are colored in green. But all the elements which are not calculated in this current version are colored in this gray color. So now you see that all these elements do not have cost estimation, and we can easily select only these elements and add this price into available cost classification or to available cost version, or even we can create new. Let me just go to the new format, or we can create new cost version within the auto assigned option. Auto assign to new cost version. So there's two options. You can choose whether you want to create new or to add this to the currently active. So if we create new, then we can easily check what is the difference between the price of the previous project and this new updated one. So I'm going to go to the cost and create new cost version using the auto assign to new. And then you're going to see the automatically all these newly added elements will be colorized in green. So you see these are automatically colorized in green because they are included in the latest version of the cost. And now you can see the difference. And of course, one of you asked, can you show the report? Yes. If you want to export report, you can choose what you want to export. In this case, I'm going to export, let's say, multiple cost versions. And I'm going to choose only these two last one. And the system will automatically export this into Excel spreadsheet. Or, and this is default template. Let me just show you. This is a default template with all information, and these are cost assignments. So you see the unit cost, material, and these different cost versions, one cost version and the previous cost version. And of course, you can check it here, but you can also different ability within the report. You can create your, you can use the option report and create your one cost version within the Excel, and it's going to be exported like this. So this is just one cost version with the cost assignment, labor, equipment, and all these available information. Of course, you have all these different information available. So let me just check in additional questions. We can see financial flow of the project within the information of the cost structure and the schedule. Yes, of course, and this is something that I'm gonna present when I explain how the 5D actually works and how you can link your cost estimation with the schedule. I'm gonna briefly just show you within this sample model, we have already created schedules, and all these schedules are related to your cost estimation, and you can check task reports with the flows. And you can export all these into Excel spreadsheets. And of course, using the export to Power BI, there's another way how you can check all these information. So this is a sample how you can check all these information using the Power BI export. And you can choose different cost versions for different buildings and different parts of the elements based on the category or the work set or the classification. So automatically it's related, and based on the template, you can see these kinds of online reports using the Power BI. Let me just check if you have some additional questions. I don't see any more questions within the Q&A. Hopefully this was clear. And if you have some additional questions, send them and I'm gonna try to respond, whether within the responses to your emails or in tomorrow's session, I'm gonna respond to your questions related to the cost classification and the cost estimation. But of course, you have to know that this is just a part of the cost estimation, and this is just the explaining how you can quantify and estimate the price and the quantities of your B models. But when when you link all these estimations to your schedule, then you're going to be able to create even more advanced reports which are related to actual timeline of your expenses, and see reports like this one. But this is a topic for the next week. If you don't have any more questions, thank you very much for your patience, and see you tomorrow. Bye bye.